just check here. Okay, so tonight we wanted to try and highlight how QoEs and components can significantly affect individual content items scores, but also to give you some clues and some tips on how to think about what you're doing to make the most of what you can do with any given element or item. And it's really about taking your strengths as a skater and working within those to get the best result. So we're not expecting young skaters to suddenly be able to do things at the same speed as a world champion. What we want to show you how to do is to take, for example, the speed that you can do something and make the most of it. So I'm just going to share my screen, and right, hopefully everybody can see my pretty pictures. So our first scenario is a free skating example, and it's an axel, which many of our skaters are learning to do. So the first scenario is a skater who performs a few steps before the axel at good speed. So they're moving around the rink really well. But just before they jump, they use the toe stop quite noticeably to slow down to a much slower pace. They then perform the axel, and the technical panel award it an axel under because it's somewhere between complete and quarter of a turn. The second scenario is a skater in the same grade who performs a few choreographic moves, and they finish with a bracket turn. And in the process of doing those moves, they slow themselves down to a pace that they prefer to do the axel. Once they've done the bracket, they almost immediately step into the takeoff, and the jump is timed for a suitable piece in the music. And what I wanted to show you guys is how that affects the score. So scenario 1, an axel that is under is worth 0.91. A complete axel is 1.3. An axel that is under is 0.91. There's a required QoE for under rotation of -1. And then there's also a QoE that we're required to consider for long preparation, which is also -1. The final score for the jump for this young skater becomes 0.51. So it's -1 and -1 is -2 as a QoE. And if you look at the jump tables in the rule books, the values table, it will show you that you take 0.4 off, so it becomes 0.51. However, there is also a negative influence on the transition component because it's not seamless into the jump. Scenario 2, the same result for the axel, it's still an axel under. However, because the skater did a few steps and body movements, and they didn't have to be complicated, they get a positive aspect or a positive bullet for that. And because they did the jump in a way that matched the musical structure of the program, they also get a positive bullet or a positive aspect. So 2 positive aspects is a +1 as a starting point on your QoEs. That offsets the under rotation of a -1, ending up with a QoE of 0, or O. So QoE of O is no change to the score. So the jump gets its full value for an axel under of 0.91. And then there is a positive influence on the transitions because there's been a clear attempt for the skater to make it seamless into the jump, and a positive influence on the choreography for an element that is seen to have logic musically and choreographically. Okay. Does that kind of make sense? Okay. Whoops, sorry, I've just lost you all. So does anyone have any questions on that now before we go any further? Because it's a little bit there's a little bit of math involved, but I'm hoping that that makes sense. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay, cool. So that logic can apply to any element, whether it's free skating, dance, teams, for example. If you are doing a quartet and you've got to do, I don't know, you've seen some of the senior talk quartets where some skaters do jumps over each other, or they set up something really wicked, but you need to do it at the right speed so that you've got control and you can present it well. Okay. Lee, have you got anything to add to that from a judge's perspective?
I think the most important bit was that first scenario, in that it's affecting the jump itself, but also it's got a double whammy of affecting the transition.
Yeah,
I think is the biggest point in those two scenarios. So you're getting hit twice.
yeah, and we definitely note it twice, don't we, when we're judging?
Yeah. If it's unfortunately very rare that I can make positive notations on my judging sheet for transitions. They really are the forgotten cousin. And so don't do the double penalty.
Thanks, Lou. Okay, so my next thing was to look at the features and what am I trying to say? The next part of what we were going to talk about tonight was around the features for footwork sequences, and just have another quick look at them. We talked about them a couple of weeks ago when we were talking about getting footwork sequences and things done. But when you take into account QOEs and components, there's some extra things to bear in mind. So I'm just going to share my screen again. And hopefully you guys are all able to see the page from the book in the solo dance manual, where it's showing some of the skating elements features. Okay, so when you're doing an artistic sequence, for example, and it's a good one to use because there's some really interesting and quite difficult features that you can use for your artistic sequence. And from, you'll see here that we've got an Ina Bauer, and I did see a beautiful one done at Nationals that actually got into a true ice skating Ina Bauer. So the front foot that's got the bent knee should actually be pretty much on an outside edge. It's actually, the Ina Bauer is actually on two contrasting edges. You've got a beautiful spread eagle there. We've got a guy doing a split jump, and I'd love to see more of those because they're really dynamic when they're done well. We've got a stag jump. Now, the stag jump in this photo has both legs bent, but you don't have to do the back leg bent, but the front leg being bent is the primary thing for the stag jump. The jump feature is any single revolution jump, and it doesn't have to be recognized. You can even do 2 foot to 2 foot if you want, but it does have to be single revolution. Then we've got some of the camel positions that are also body position features for the artistic sequence. So you've got the invert, you've got the ring, the sideways ring, or otherwise known as the donut. Now, pay attention to these, because if you're going to do them as the feature in the artistic sequence, they actually have to meet the same requirements as if you were doing them, for example, in the spin. So if you're going to do the invert position as your feature, you have to get into a proper invert position, which is very, very difficult when you're just rolling along the floor. A lot of skaters keep their shoulders up way too high and keep their head up. Okay. The ring is, getting your foot around to your head. It should be pretty much touching your head. Okay, and that's the clear difference between the ring and the Biellmann. If you have a look at the Biellmann position, the foot is held away from the head. okay, and should be almost up over the skating foot. Then we've got the illusion and the Charlotte. So the Charlotte position, I've seen a few skaters doing at Nationals this year, and their leg, instead of being straight up like that, was maybe at 120 degrees, so sticking well off axis out to the side. Okay, so if you're going to choose anything to do as a feature, it's got to comply with the requirements to make it that feature. So if you were to do, for example, we just talked about the invert, but your head was way up higher than your hip, and so were your shoulders, you're not going to get the invert called. So you're going to be missing one of the three things that you need to do. Same with the ring position, and if you're going to do it sideways, it's got to be sideways. So that the same rules apply to the body movements features that we've got in the rules. So low space body movement, you've got to get down somewhere. So we used to call them a sleeping beauty. I'm not sure what they're called now. Teapots or shoot the ducks. Anything that gets you down into the lower space below your own waist height. Charlotte or an illusion can be either, because we can choose whichever one is missing of the three. So if you do a beautiful sleeping beauty type movement right down low, and then you do an illusion, we'll consider that high space because you got the leg up into the high space. If you do a really nice Biellmann and then you do an illusion, we'll consider the illusion a low space because the Biellmann's a high space position. Okay. If you want to do something, I know a lot of people feel they can't do the high space position, but there's one that we used to call a ship when I was a young skater, which was a glide where you just reach around and grab your foot and help it somewhere above your hip line. That's enough. Okay, you don't have to do the split upright position where you're holding your foot up by your head. If you're me, that would kill you. That would kill me. Okay, if I decide to get out and do masters again, I'm doing a ship because that's the safest thing I know how to do. It can be as simple as a glide with a bent leg that goes into the high space above the midline there where you are in the glide, right? But it has to have something come up over the hip level, the waist level. Okay, they are meant to be body movements that have some form of choreographic meaning. So another pet thing at the moment is we're seeing a lot of people do extreme flexibility moves, but they take a long time to get to them. So if we go back to the scenario we've just been talking about, the free skating, and you look at the dance QOEs to give you an idea how things might be interpreted. Sorry, I've just about worn the page out studying over the last few days. But if they have no choreographic meaning, then they're going to detract from their choreography score because they're not adding to the program. They might be a feature, but they're not adding to the program. A big part of any of the choreographic elements in dance is the musical side of it, the musicality. So your choreographic sequence or your choreographic pose, one half of the QOE is musicality. So if it's not coherent with the music and the choreography, or of no choreographic reason, then it's an immediate -2 as a QOE and what you're doing. Now that's only one part of the sequence, but you start adding up a bunch of things that have no choreographic meaning, it's a big negative influence on the QOE.
Pam, we've just got a question in the chat there.
Sure. Yes, you need a feature in the middle position. They're the easy ones. Glides. It doesn't have to be a standard glide. You can go sideways on. Anything like that is fine. Anything in that mid space. So something in the high space, something in the low space, and something in the mid space. If you're ever wondering Let me just see if I can very quickly find it, or I will try and do before we finish the session tonight. But there is a really good, here we go. Really good picture. Sorry, moving around my screen's taking me a while. This picture here is really good to understand where you need to be for each of the spaces, right? But every time you're planning out your movements for your low, mid, and high for a footwork sequence, for example, look at this graph or this picture and try and get things in that space. Now, there's an infinite variety of things that you can do, but you've got to try, like for a high space, you've got to get leg and shoulders and something up in the same realm. Anything in the middle space is tummy height, right? Anything in the low space, you've got to try and get down below the hips. We're pretty flexible about what we'll accept, but you've got to be trying to aim for those things. And I remember in the very early days of RollArt, I had a couple of master skaters ask me if arms up above their shoulders was a high space body movement. It's not, because it actually doesn't change where your body is at all. Okay? So that's a really clear example of something that wouldn't count, right? So just going like that, it's not a high space body movement. So yeah, high, low, and middle to give you the body movements feature for a dance program or a free skating program's footwork sequence. Okay. The artistic sequence we were talking about is pretty much a dance element only, but we are starting to see in quartets and precision elements that are building on both of those concepts. So, for example, in quartets, we're seeing clusters, and they follow exactly the same rules as a dance cluster. So they will have the ability to get have a feature that's based around the body spaces, right? And at the moment in a cluster, you just need one body movement in each footwork in each set, and they just need to be from different spaces. So you can do, and in a quartet, you can have two people doing a glide and two people doing a high leg position, and that's your body movement on one, and then you go somewhere, as long as they change to something else for the next one, deal done. Okay. The big thing is to try and keep them so they fit with the music, fit with your footwork, and fit what you can actually do, so that you are meeting the choreography side of things. I mean, I don't know if anybody's ever had a really good look, but I've been studying a lot the QOEs as I'm preparing for an international exam in a couple of weeks. And it's really interesting when you start thinking about choreography as design, body design, musical relationship, and the story that you're trying to tell, the choreographic intent. Any questions out of that? I couldn't really give you any easy numbers or math to do on that one, but...
Yeah, we've got another question there, Pam.
Sure. Okay, so cluster is something that I don't think Daisy will be doing at her age grade yet, but it's like a traveling in that you do two sets of things on each foot. But one has, the traveling is just the quick rotations. A cluster is 3 more complex turns on one foot and then 3 more complex turns on the other foot. Okay, skaters who need to do a cluster will know what it is, and it's something I'm sure your coach will build up as you get close to it. For the skaters that do need to do it, it's definitely a thing around the getting the different features to get the higher levels. Okay, I'm going to throw one quick other thing at you if there's no more questions on this, because it's another example of thinking things through, and it is built around a traveling. And Lee, I would love you to have a good look at the example as we go, because I'd love your feedback at the end as to explain how you view the two scenarios. So let me just share my screen again. Just bear with me a second. Okay, so hopefully you guys can all see this page, and it's for dance skaters, but the theory we're working on applies to quartets, to free skating with other elements and things. So that's based around Espoir rules. So for an Espoir skater, they've got a maximum of a level 3. So the first skater performs a very simple entry into the traveling sequence, does left foot clockwise for 3 full rotations with their arms extended to the front. So that's an arm feature. They then do 2 or 3 steps with a choreographic body movement in between. You can imagine anything you like, but we're talking things like glides or Sleeping Beauty, teapot, whatever they choose. Then they come up, and then they do on the right foot, they go counterclockwise for 3 rotations, lifting and dropping the free leg continuously through the rotations, which, if you have a look at the rules, is an advanced feature. So it gets a really good score. Scenario 2, the skater performs a simple entry into the traveling sequence again, does 3 rotations clockwise with no identified feature, does 3 very quick steps in between, then does a left foot counterclockwise for 3 rotations, and then another quick 3 steps, and a third set on the right foot with their leg in a pirouette position, which is a leg feature, and an arm over the head, which is an arm feature. But it takes the skater 12 seconds to complete the travel. And that's the trick, because you're only allowed to take 10 seconds. Now, let me know if you'd like me to leave the PowerPoint back up on the screen. In fact, can anyone take a guess, and feel free to do it on the mic or in the chat, with the first scenario. In fact, I will put it back up on the screen. Have a look at that first scenario and think about what we've been talking about tonight, and what are the positive things you can see about that scenario. Anyone got any ideas? No?
The choreographic body movement and the linking steps.
Yeah, that's a big one, because it suddenly influences the QOE that we're going to give that traveling, regardless of how good the steps were, the actual travels themselves were. That taking some time in between is a big thing with traveling. There's a whole chunk of your QOE is the connecting footwork steps. Okay, do they are they stylish? Are they smooth? Do they fit the musical relationship? It's a real big bonus. If you can do something in there that fits the music and connects the 2 sequences well, so that they're easy for you to do, big bonus. Okay. Have a look at scenario 2, and I did mention it, but have a think about what you think might happen. So the skater in this instance has put their arm and leg feature, which they're relying on to get more than a base level, in the third set, but it hasn't been completed by time the traveling needs to be finished. Does anybody have any idea what that might mean for the skater? Okay. Basically, it means none of those features count. And I saw half a dozen of those at Nationals, where kids did great attempts at a basic traveling, really nice. But they put key things they needed to get maximum score in the last set of a 3-set traveling and didn't get it done within the 10 seconds. So suddenly what could be a level 3 with a 3rd set bonus becomes a level base, or at best a level 1, because it's only one counting feature. And that's that they've used different feet. Lee, from a judge's perspective, those two scenarios, what else would you be looking at with them?
Definitely the smoothness of the turns, and the features need to be clear. I know that's more a TS call, but if I'm left in doubt, I'm just thinking it's messy.
Yeah.
And it's not going to get the credit the skater's hoping for.
Well, you're quite right, because if the features aren't clear, then they're also not aesthetically correct. So it affects the presentation and the quality, doesn't it? Yeah.
I'm happy to see both of your scenarios.
I don't know about you, but at Nationals this year, I thought we saw a vastly improved range of things people were attempting.
I have to say the travelling, everyone's starting to get the idea and nailing it. It's even the little fellas that they're getting it, you know. Yeah, very impressive. Yeah, no, it's good.
I did see a beautiful example in one of the videos I've been watching from an international event, where a young couple kept it down to 2 sequences, and didn't go for the 3rd set bonus, which is the one most our Kiwis are going for. But they actually went for that leg up and down bonus, and they timed their legs beautifully. So they basically went up on one turn and down on the next, and they perfectly synchronized. And just a very simple arm feature, because all you have to do for an arm feature is one arm up over the head, or both of them out here. You don't have to do anything super complicated. And that leg up and down is a massive bonus feature. Another one that I haven't seen done well before, but if you happen to be looking at some of the videos on the World Skate website, look at the latest World Series final in San Juan, and there was a young fella in youth who did pretty much went almost down into a full sit spin position and back up again as he did the second set of his travel. So it was very, very difficult and very well done. I'm going to leave you in Phoenix's care just to see if she can give you a few tips or answer any questions on how maybe to develop some of these ideas. I'm really sorry, but again, I've got to disappear and go and do some family stuff. But yeah, if anyone's got any questions, any ideas, anything they want answered, remember, you can always get hold of me. And Jenny, as I say, has been recording this. So if you know anyone that would have wanted to be here and couldn't. And Lee, thanks very much for your input as always. Take care, everyone.
Thank you, Pam. Yeah, guys, so I think those tips from the judges' perspectives are pretty self-explanatory in terms of what we as skaters and as coaches have to do. Just be creative and make sure you're including a lot of variety into your trainings, whether you're a skater or a coach. They can be in your warm-ups and warm-downs. Just play with positions and teach your body to get into some different positions so that you can start to develop a whole bunch of different ones, because once you get up into higher levels, you're not going to be able to just do the same positions over and over again. You will need a bit of variety. But yeah, other than that, does anyone have any specific questions? Otherwise, Jenny can wrap it up for us. No? Cool. Easy. All right. Well, thank you guys for coming. We'll pop the recording up on the website. And we'll see you after Oceanias. We're going to take a little bit of a break. So we'll be in touch with when the next lot of Zooms are starting back. And for the rest of the year, they'll more than likely be fortnightly, not weekly. So we were trying to jam a bunch of stuff in during the competition season. But yeah, we're looking towards fortnightly ones. Maybe September-ish we'll start back.
Yeah, what Phoenix said. Yeah, ditto. So watch out for the recordings on the Artistic website. All the very best to all the skaters that are heading over to Oceanias. We wish you every success. And yeah, we'll be back with a fortnightly series once everyone's had a little bit of a break. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks.